All right, everybody, we are recording.
I forgot I was going to mime that on time it. Recording in progress.
Challenge for next time.
Oh, yeah. Kia ora, welcome in, everyone. Thanks for your agility and adaptability today to adjust timings. We deliberated for quite some time this morning on whether we should extend it. And the moment we made the call, let's hold that space. We realised there was no 1 p.m. update for us to tune into, which I loved. Charlotte's response was, that's so 2021. Just when you adapt something and you change something, something else changes again, which is just wonderful. So hopefully you enjoyed that extra half an hour that you had planned to be here and got to spend doing something else. We are here and we're present, and I'm aware that most people dialing in today are dialing in from Aotearoa, from New Zealand, which means that we are all in the middle of some form of lockdown. And my hope is that this brings a bit of lightness and fun and energy, some good energy into your day and your week. Because I know for some people it's been a tough week. And so, yeah, that's one of our kind of goals for today, is to make this something that you walk away feeling some good energy, but also that you walk away thinking, I've never thought of it like that. So that's ultimately one of the goals of coming into these sessions, is to challenge some of our thinking around some pretty complex problems that we're trying to solve in our organisations. So kia ora and welcome to Agile HR Aotearoa. Ko Cheryl Tukuingoa. My name is Cheryl, and we've been running these sessions for, I should actually check the date on this. I reckon it's over a year, but not 2 years, somewhere in between there, each month. And this is a space for people. We believe that Agile is more than just a shift in the way that we work. We believe Agile is about the people within these systems, and we believe there are better ways of working that happen when we better understand the people. So we host these online events, education. They're designed to learn and connect our community in, and just to trigger thoughts and ideas that perhaps we might be desiring when we're trying to solve some of these complex problems. Our vision here is to really build this community so that we can learn and share with each other. Experiment is a word that we use a huge amount in this group and within Agile environments. And we know that people are running experiments all over the country and trying to develop this agility. So we want to share, we want to learn, we want to try different things and inspire each other to do that as well. So here's how this session works. And this is a new format we started a couple of months ago. We're calling it an interactive podcast. The reason we changed formats is we did a bit of research with our community and we asked, what are you looking for in these events? And the majority came back and said, I just want to listen in and tune in. I don't necessarily want to be jumping into conversations myself and engaging with groups, because obviously there's a lot of different formats that we can run. So this is, I think, our third experiment. Is that right, Charlotte? Is this our third time?
Yeah, this is our third one.
This is our third one. So with the interactive podcast, you join the session with the primary goal of listening in and getting some ideas. The way in which you can engage is to ask questions. Now, you give us your questions. The community will vote for which question they're most interested to talk about first. And then we hold about 5 minutes for each question and we jam on that question. So I've got a couple of wonderful people that are joining me today, and we're going to be jamming on these questions. So it's like listening into a podcast, but if you want to interact, you ask a question. If it gets voted to the top, we may ask you to give us a bit of context if you're open to that, because it can help us with answering it. And if throughout the session you've got any thoughts you want to add or any ideas, you can use the chat channel to put those comments and thoughts in there as well. So just setting the expectations around the session. There'll be 3 of us that are hosting these questions, that are talking about them, that are bringing different ideas into it. And each time the question is asked, we will ask the person who asked the question to come in and give us a bit of context. So as we start to do these more, it may start to feel more comfortable, and we're constantly getting feedback. There'll be a form at the end that, a little poll that we'll do just to get feedback as to how you found the session as well. So hopefully it's like a combination of a podcast, lean coffee, a live stream, and it's an experiment that we're running. So we hope that you enjoy it. And as a reminder, our goal today is that you walk away thinking, I've never thought of it like that. These are complex conversations about complex problems. And whenever we're working with people, nothing is predictable. So we just want to set the tone here that the answers that we're providing and the ideas we're providing are from perspectives of experiences that we've had in organizations, working with people in these contexts. There is no right answer. So we're not pretending that we have all of the answers. We're simply here to ignite some thinking in different ways of doing things. Logistics wise, when you come into the session, I think you are muted by default. So again, we just leave our microphones on mute so that we can hear the speakers that are happening at the time. And again, if you have any thoughts or comments you want to add, just pop them into the chat channel. Our norms and our rules are based on 3 really simple letters, is LRS, learning, respect, and safety. So we're here to learn. This is sort of our goal. We're sharing so others can learn, and we're sharing with each other through our experiences. Respect. If you disagree, that's totally cool. In fact, that's awesome. Just simply consider how you may disagree in a way that is kind to the person on the other side of it. And safety, we want to hold a safe space here. We do record these sessions so that people can watch them afterwards. So just keep in mind, anything that you share in this session will be heard outwardly in the public domain. So just aware if you're using any kind of context to your organization or an organization that you've worked in, it will be shared. So just keep that in mind. I'll let you use your own discretion for that. All right, so for asking the questions, Slido is our tool that we're using, and I believe, Charlotte, are you all good to paste it into
Yeah, pasted it in there. You might see it a few times coming through, so that people who are joining the call a little bit after we've posted can join in the conversations.
Beautiful, awesome. And while Charlotte is there, I'd love to introduce my wonderful co-host, Charlotte Hinton. She's a coach, Scrum Master, facilitator, and leads teams to work together more openly and collaboratively. Quick check-in, Charlotte. How you feeling today?
I'm feeling really good. I'm really excited about the conversations today. Just as I said, I get goosebumps up my arms, so I must be here for the right time, for the right place today.
Awesome. Kia ora. Thank you for being here and being part of our community and helping me with hosting these. And we've got a special guest today. So each month we have a different topic that's voted by the community in the last event. So we vote, the topic decides on the content, the community decides on the content. So last session we had a topic decided, and that was enabling effective performance. That was the top voted topic. So that is our topic for today. And when I was thinking about enabling effective performance, I thought, who's a really interesting person that I know that I would love to jam on this topic with? And I wanted to pick someone who challenges my way of thinking. And, you know, there's certain people that you get to work with in your life who, when you think of, I've never thought of it like that. This particular person is someone who I would say rates very highly in terms of making me think of things in a way that I haven't thought of them before. So I would like to introduce our special guest today, who is Joe Auslander. Welcome, Joe.
Kia ora.
Kia ora. Joe works with teams to solve unique problems. We connected up when we were both working at Westpac. We were there in a coaching capacity, but the conversations we used to get, I still remember, I'm pretty sure you interviewed me, Joe, and I remember you asked me really specific questions around people and culture. And I remember thinking, if he cares about this stuff and he wants me to come in to support as agile coaches, this is the type of person that I want to work with. And so I was super fortunate we got to work together. Joe is based in Auckland, so he's dealing with a lot of the challenges that are in Auckland at the moment, but is working across and has worked across many organisations and many different industries in this capacity. But I love, for Joe, one of his lines is, I love seeing people succeed. And Joe, I think that's such a beautiful approach. Welcome to our session today. How are you feeling this afternoon?
Oh, humbled. That was an amazing introduction. Thank you, Cheryl. The feeling was very mutual being able to work with you, by the way. That was an awesome experience. No, I'm good. I'm grateful. Yeah, just ready to jump into this.
All right, boom.
Boom.
So we've got our Slido going on, and again in the chat channel, if you want to add a question, I think Charlotte and I have thrown a few questions in there already.
We've even got some new ones coming in as well, which is great.
Excellent. So chuck those in there. Let's have a little look. Okay. All right. So it's bumped up to the top. I did give Joe a little heads up. I said I'm going to throw a couple of big questions at you in the Slido poll to see who wants to talk about what. And again, our content is decided by our community. So our top question, should we just go straight into this, Joe?
Let's get into
it. What is one thing, or what one thing do you believe HR could do to change the way we look at performance? So I'm going to set this as a starting point, and I'm going to also hit a timer because we're going to hold 5 minutes for this. So this might be a nice way for maybe you can frame a little bit around your thinking on this topic. And yeah, what would you say for one thing that HR could do to support this?
Me?
Yeah.
Okay. In my head, I've got about 5 answers, and I'm not really sure which one. I guess it depends on what you mean by performance. If you mean like delivery teams, I'm just going to put down what I think about as performance. It's like delivery teams acting and behaving and delivering in a way that they're designed to for whatever the business case is or whatever the business is trying to accomplish. In that case, I would say the best thing they could do is find out a way for the organization to actually invest in those behaviors. So one of the hardest parts of my job when I go into a place is them not seeing the act of managing your own work, or if they're self-managing teams, the act of managing your own work is actually work. And so it ends up getting pushed aside a lot. And while they may be delivering unique units of value, they're also separating themselves from the culture as a whole, because people, they're not taking the time to build trust to help people understand what they do. So it's a real shame. I wish it wasn't that way, but there is value in taking a little time to build some discipline around building transparency in your work, using delivery metrics to help improve, or at least help bring in stakeholders to understand what's possible. So the problem with that, though, is you're always under the gun. There's always an emergency. There's always something to do. And these behaviors, they take practice, they take repetition, they take feedback, and they need to be supported by more than just the team. The managers of the teams themselves, and the product owners, and any of the stakeholders, and all the way up to the top. There are environmental triggers or support areas that need to exist for those behaviors to exist. They don't exist in isolation. So for me, I mean, I think in terms of performance, is as far as like intentional performance, I'm not talking high performance. I'm talking about just intentional performance. I would say that, yeah, just making sure that that's something that the business invests in, not, like they're saying, work harder, be a better developer. They're probably excellent developers, but maybe they're not, maybe they don't have the experience to work in a team to manage to work together.
Yeah, intentional performance is a really cool phrase there. When you talked about discipline behaviors and linking this in again around like what is one thing that HR could do, what would be maybe some examples of some discipline behaviors, and maybe some that you would rate as, because I know that you have a lot of different rhythms and things that you practice yourself. You experiment with all this stuff on yourself. So what do you think of some?
My own guinea pig. There's some truth to that, yeah.
Totally. So what, in terms of those disciplined behaviors, what would you rate as like a really, you got to do at least this in terms of a disciplined behavior to get to have that intentional performance?
One thing that there's a common misconception in agile delivery that there's no documentation, or there's you should just be delivering stuff and everyone should just sort of flock around you and figure it out based on the fact that you're delivering stuff. And as much as I want that to be true, because I've been a developer and I know, just let me focus on the thing that I know is right. I guess you have a decision to make. And so it's like partially the organization's decisions, partially the team's decision. If the organization says we want self-managing teams, there's an expectation that you will be doing the same things that a manager would have been doing, which means you have a responsibility to keep people informed. You have a responsibility to know if there are any scope concerns from the business, whether it be time, budget, anything like that. And you're expected to manage within that, not to say to hit them, but to at least tell people who are investing in you or trusting you when you're getting close to that expectation. And so what I see a lot is we start relatively big pieces of work, not huge, but even something that would take a month to 2 months without really sitting down and getting comfortable with the scope and who cares about it. When I've seen teams take the time, what you see in planning come out is they start to invite the stakeholders into the conversation, even though they're not there, saying, hey, this thing's taking longer. Should we let Steve know? Should we let Cheryl know? Does this compromise, or does this new information that we're going to pivot on, who do we have to talk to? Automatically, just because they've had that conversation in the beginning, they can start to plan how they seat the work in the organization, because that's part of the work too. The cost of being a self-managing team is that you have to do all these things in a large environment, probably less so in a small environment, but in a large environment to make sure that the system doesn't protect you, that it knows what's happening. So I don't think that's made explicit to teams a lot of the time. I think they're just like, we want you to be autonomous in the sense we want you to make decisions, but there's always a cost in a large environment to being able to make those decisions and not being rejected and being supported continuously.
Oh, we're at time on that question.
Oh, yeah.
Beautiful. All right, we're going to switch up to the next question. And may I, because I'm noticing my question around, and it's a cracker question, I'm stoked that it's getting some hits, but I'd love to bring another person from the community in to the discussion next. So I might put my question on ice for a second there around the responsibility of performance. And I'm going to ask whether Pip is keen to jump in and give us a little bit of context, because your question is at the top. So the question here, where have you seen high performance teams working well? What was it that they did that you could share?
Fantastic. Thank you everyone for bumping my question up to the top. I think it was probably come from our focus has been around creating and fostering a team of high performance, and to have the culture that supports those performance outcomes. And I think it's probably something where I work in an accounting firm, and everything is quite measurable in terms of performance and productivity and the deliverables. And keen to hear probably some examples around what other organisations have done to help build those high performance teams, because I wonder if we are focusing on measuring the right or wrong outputs or deliverables.
Oh, yeah. I got a little thought to throw in, and then I'm going to hand over to Joe. The title of this talk is around enabling effective performance. And I quite like actually splitting the enabling from the effective performance, because it sort of feels like there's sort of two conversations there. And it sounds like the piece you're talking is not so much maybe the enabling, but what is effective performance? So defining that piece. What do we know what effective means in that context? That's the first thought that came up there for me around that, but I'd love to send it over to Joe to get his thoughts.
Thank you.
I probably want to start by sharing one of my pet peeves with you, which is I hate the term high performance teams. Ironically, in the career that I've chosen for myself, that seems to be the selling point for why to hire me. But I also try to talk them out of hiring me by saying that that's probably not what they're going to get. Mainly because what it kind of to your point, Pip, is if you want a high performing team, that means you have to have a high performing environment. Teams don't exist beyond themselves unless they are the company themselves. So like in a large environment, like I've worked in a few banks, I've worked in a few telcos. They'll say they want high performing teams, but they don't actually want to change the environment to support a high performing team. So we can get a team that can do really good work, be excellent planners, and then at some point they hit a wall. In other words, they need access to somebody else in the business, or a piece of tech in the business, or they need permission being made on a daily basis, not once every 2 weeks, or they need an architect readily available, and they could soar through this stuff, and they would educate themselves, and they would be really into it. But there are too many pieces of work going on in the organization at the time that the people that they need for that aren't available, and so their whip is huge. So I think generally the intent is like, it's kind of that nice feeling. It's like, kind of like I believe in being polite, but I'm not actually polite in real life. It's kind of the same thing with high performing teams and organizations. We believe in high performing teams, but we don't actually believe that we're going to actually act in a way to really support them. So I think what I've ironically though, what I've been able to do is get teams to a self-sustaining, aware of their performance, which was significantly better than where they were at before, and they see that as high performing. So I don't really know what high performing means, so I don't really like that term. But I guess normally what you need to get a team to perform is you need to be very clear as to what your expectations are of them, and you need to be very clear about what they can expect from the environment in terms of support. If you're not clear in any one of those things, a team that is quite motivated will pull that out of you anyways. And so being specific is pretty good. You can be wrong and it can change, but give them an answer, give them some scope. People can focus their effort if they have some scope. So say, we expect you to be a self-managing team, and they go, what does that mean? It's like, oh, that means that we're going to give you work, and you determine when you're ready to do it, and then you do it, and you tell us when you're done. And you're like, cool, that's what we'll do. And they may do that for a while, and then we get really good at it, and then they may realize that they can add more to the conversation by looking a little bit more upstream, or maybe they say, we're doing this great work, but actually it's not aligned to the strategy, and you're like, whoa, maybe we have to change all the work that we give you, and you're like, that's what we were thinking. You don't know what's going to happen. But the point is that it's really just having that conversation between the environment and the team, and setting expectations and having that conversation. I think that's probably the first most meaningful step.
Joe, you're on the money because we're on time again. Nice work.
Been practicing 5-minute sound bites. All right, we're gonna roll. Let's jump into this one. It's a top vote there. Who should be responsible for performance? I threw this one in because the context of that, and I'd love to open up this, Joe and Charlotte, of your experiences, because you're both super experienced in working with teams to achieve performance, whether it be high performance, quality performance, value performance, whatever we call it. The responsibility and the reason, the context of throwing this up as a question is my move from a role of project manager to Scrum Master. As a project manager, I believed it was my responsibility for the team's performance. That's certainly what I got told and what I got measured on, was how well my team performed. The move into as a Scrum Master, as part of the Scrum framework, is that responsibility shifts to my team, and my job is to help them to take that responsibility and hold it and own it, which was a really big shift for me as a Scrum Master, certainly a big shift for the teams that I worked with. So that was a big piece of that, was around actually saying to them, I'm no longer responsible for your performance, you are. And so I'd love to hear from you guys in terms of your experiences, and whether you went through that same transition yourself, or whether you've seen that, how you've seen that sort of play out to increase performance by the person getting out of the way, like the leader getting out of the way.
Such a great question. Joe, do you want to have a crack at it first? We can share the time.
Yep. But I'm going to break the container of the question a little bit. And instead of who should be responsible for performance, I might rephrase the question on how do we have a conversation around how we share responsibility for performance. I think areas of expertise, I wouldn't go in, it's been 10 years since I was a developer. There's no way that I would put myself in a position of saying I was responsible for a developer who's quite capable of performance. That's ridiculous. They know what they're doing. If they're experienced and they've had successes and that they know what they're doing. But if I were their coach or if I were their Scrum Master, I would have a responsibility for creating a container for them to be able to have conversations that are meaningful for them, to make sure that any information that I had that we believed could affect the team was shared, and probably other expectations that I'm not even aware of yet. That would come out through talking to the developer. And the same thing with managers and everything. We all have a responsibility that affects performance. So I would change the question. Sorry.
I said Joe.
Cool. I'm just sort of riffing on that as well. I think, when it comes down to performance, performance is a really loaded sort of a question, a word. And, in the past, it has been used as a weapon, I suppose, for people who whereby they're not performing, it turns into a really negative thing. So I think how we change working with people around what performance is. I think there's performance at a team level, and then there's that performance at an individual level as well. And the role that we have as leaders is really to support people, to nurture them, to get the direction that they need, to provide them with the tools that we can in order for them to basically thrive and succeed in what it is that they're doing, help them with their goal setting, and whether that's goal setting for immediate future state, or immediate right now or future state. I think that's what part of measuring performance is about, is, it's a combination of personal and team and goal setting, and how we can support them to do the best that they do. Because like Joe said, he's been out of the game from a development perspective for a few years now, but that doesn't mean that he can't help support and nurture them to be the best that they can be, and provide that support around them. So yeah, that's kind of what I think about when I think about performance, is what tools can we give them to help them get on their journey more.
Maybe to conclude, the performance sits with the person, and our role is to hold that space. And I say our leaders, HR teams, whoever it is that's there to support people. All right, flipping over, we've got another question that's popped to the top. Sam has asked a beautiful question, which is, I was hoping something might come up around the team side of stuff. So Sam asked, how might an organisation change to measure team performance instead of individual performance? Sam, do you want to give us a bit of context there around your question? Is this something you're dealing with at the moment, or you've experienced?
Yes, it's something we're thinking about at the moment at Genesis, and it kind of comes from the background of you get what you measure. So if we measure individual performance, we might get some really high performing individuals, but actually what we care about is a high performing organization. So we want to step that up a level and go, how might we measure team performance instead of individual performance, and how might we blend those in an actual practical sense?
Coming to you, Joe.
Hey, Sam. I think there's a danger when we're talking about performance, in that it's quite often linked to remuneration. And if you're talking about how do we measure performance in terms of remuneration, I don't really have a very good answer for you. If we're talking about how do we measure performance for the sake of like awareness, into seeing where we can support, then there's probably a million different answers. The remuneration bit really screws up performance, because it sort of implies that there's this connection between how much money we pay someone and reward someone versus how much they've done or are able to do. And I mean, just from, I'm sure we all have personal experiences where we've seen that it doesn't equate that way. Like I've gotten bonuses for opportunities that I've gotten that people that are just as talented and committed as I am at the job just didn't have. And so the only reason I got a bonus was because I was in the right part of the business at the right time, not because I was any more or less capable. It's just that work wasn't available to other people. And I felt that was really unfair. Same thing with sales performance. Sales performance is one of the things that always irks me. You know, of course, we should be rewarding sales people for finding opportunities. I think it's great. The problem is we don't penalize them or delay their reward until whether the opportunity they got that actually helps the business or not. So quite often you'll get sales opportunities that breaks delivery and ends up causing sort of like technical debt for the organization because we have this contract now, we have to get it. And so I like to separate the two. On a performance end, how do you do that? I mean, I think, I don't know where Genesis is in its journey, but performance is kind of the last step in 3 for me. I start with awareness. So do we have the capability of being aware of what we're doing? So can we measure throughput? Can we measure the stress on our system? Can we, do we have really the basics of just being aware of what we're doing? Then we would go into fitness and to say, so we've baselined that we know what our performance looks like. What does fit look like? And based on how we fit into the system. So we might say we have a throughput of, just some generic example, like 10 units a week. Whatever you're doing, it's 10 units a week. And that's with, we've really worked on awareness, and we know that it's 10 units a week because we're constantly blocked by this dependency on this team. And we also, we have a person on staff that only works 2 days a week that we need quite often. We need more than 2 days a week. So we go from awareness to fitness to say, what if we address those things and mitigated those? Could we increase our performance from 10 units a week to 11 units a week or whatever it is? Once you start getting used to running experiments based on your awareness, you reach a certain level of fitness. And so that means that you've built the skill from being able to baseline, so we can measure where we're at any moment, to the ability to experiment with your baseline to figure out what works and to be able to communicate it. And at that point, you can start to set performance goals, but that takes a while. So the journey of going from awareness to performance kind of helps you establish those things as an organization, but it takes time. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of focus. I come from a school of thought where no one skill or role is independent. So if I train a team for a skill set for like around awareness, I have to train the managers, the stakeholders, and anybody who cares about what they do, because they have to be able to interpret and give feedback based on this new data that they're getting, and they have to have context. So eventually, you know, after you do a few teams and you get a few managers and you get a few other people that support the team, stakeholders and stuff, it fills itself out, but it does take a while to get going.
You think as well, Joe, just to build on that, I was just reflecting on, in order to switch from individual measurement of performance to team performance, I noticed a shift when we had some teams started using Scrum and we started estimating story points. But these story points weren't for an individual, they were for the team. So we would point pieces of work, and there's a whole, if story point is a new concept, that might be a nice one to go and check out. But the team had to size the work, figure out how much work there was to do. And then there was a team goal of how many points do we as a team believe we can achieve. Now, up until that point, they'd never had to really deliver anything as a team, but now they actually had to work together, and we had something to measure. Now, the measurement was based on helping us understand how much we felt this team thought it could get through, how good they were at estimating versus actually achieving it. But it might be interesting to sort of look at in your organisation within Genesis. Is there any way at the moment that you can currently incentivize a team to want to, and when I use the word incentivize, I mean get them curious about how well they deliver as a team? How can you find ways in which they have a goal they've got to reach together and see whether or not they can achieve it? So then they have to start delivering together. Not any one person gets rewarded until the whole team gets over the line. And that can be a really interesting, I know certain individuals within that team got really frustrated when they said, well, I feel like I'm doing all the work and my team's not achieved. So I've not succeeded, but actually I've been really busy. I don't like this new way of doing it. So it took some time of us doing that as a team, but what it forced them to do was actually start working together, and the performance of that team started to increase because they knew they had to work together to be successful. So I just wanted to offer that up as a thought as well, is, you know, have you got team goals in place that the whole team have to achieve it? If you don't, then you're going to struggle for that team to perform well together.
Cool. Awesome. All right. We're at time, or just over time on that question as well. So thanks.
I'm not sure if I answered your question, Sam, but so
hopefully you're going, huh?
Sorry, I'm renowned for going on a tangent. So if I didn't answer your question, apologies.
Let us know, Sam. It's a cool challenge to have in place, and happy to keep the conversation after this as well. All right, next question. Cool. I'm going to grab this anonymous. Does anonymous want to make themselves unanonymous for the purpose of giving us a bit of context? It might be that when you put the question in that you didn't realize you could put your name, or you might want to remain anonymous. That's totally fine as well. But the question is, what is best practice in terms of performance feedback within an agile environment? So best practice in terms of performance feedback within an agile environment. I'll just hold a little bit of space in case anyone goes, oh, that was my question and I'd love to give a bit of context. Totally fine if you want to leave it anonymous. So feedback wise, maybe Joe, you touched earlier on trust and how important that is, and obviously one of the core fundamental parts of most different ways in which you work within an agile way of working is foundationally based on trust. And so that's what comes to mind for me when I first think about how to create an environment for feedback. But I wonder if you've got any more you want to build on in terms of how do you go about using feedback as a way for us to increase the performance through that?
Well, feedback's built into it. You can't deliver in an agile manner without feedback. And feedback's also a two-way road. It doesn't just aim at the team. In fact, quite often the team will give you feedback, whether you're ready for it or not, on how you can change what you're doing to support them if they're confident, and that's a good thing. Best practice tips in terms of feedback. So if you're aiming for some sort of self-management within the team, they'll probably already have or be in the process of developing their own feedback on their delivery performance, and they'll be well aware of it. If they are again on their road to being able to control their delivery environment, then they are likely to have practices in place where they raise issues that are outside of their control to, if there's like a scaled tribe function, then hopefully to that, or to maybe their agile coach or scrum master, who hopefully carries that as an impediment. Again, all of these things are built into the various structures, or if you're designing from scratch, in just doing it from the principles, it's already built into that. But as far as like what's best practice in terms of feedback is, if you want feedback to be effective, particularly when you get it from your team, don't let it disappear. And I see this so often, and it disconnects the team from their environment, and it creates a lack of transparency, because there's nothing of value for them to communicate that they're blocked if no one's going to unblock it, or there's nothing of value for them to communicate to you if something's more difficult than it should be, or if they need time to improve something and you don't give it to them, or you don't respond to them if you're like, oh yeah, I hear you, thank you, and you go away and you never come back to tell them where it's at, even if it's taking a while to resolve. That every time you don't give them feedback on their feedback, as funny as that sounds, you're decreasing the width of that road. So feedback is something to cultivate, to make time for, to budget for if you're supporting a team.
Yeah, there's two-way, right? You've got two-way feedback, and what's sort of also aligning in from an agile point of view is everything that we're doing around developing agile teams or using the agile values and principles is around understanding what the customer needs, so we can deliver value to them as quickly as we possibly can. We can get the highest value items to the top of our list, and that requires the same two-way feedback, right? We can take the same concepts around how do we develop feedback and good mechanisms, because if a customer gives us feedback and we don't, like you said, it disappears, it breaks, it narrows that road. And so, you know, we can use exactly the same principles when it comes to supporting our people. And I love the word disappear. You know, there's nothing worse than you give that feedback and it doesn't go anywhere. Why would you possibly want to do it again? So I think that's a beautiful way to just link those in as well around the agile side of this, because a lot of people, you know, our next question coming up around agile versus non-agile. One of the key parts, fundamental parts of the Agile Manifesto is around understanding our customer and what they need. We can only understand them and their changing needs if we continue a two-way dialogue.
I'm just going to jump in there as well, just with a couple of thoughts. One thing that I think about is how we give feedback as well, and what types of tools and techniques are available for, you know, providing that type of feedback, because obviously giving feedback can be really constructive and it can be hard for someone to take on board. So, you know, making it something around how you've observed something that's happened within an interaction, which is really nice, or, you know, you've seen or you've heard from, and just being able to provide it in a way that's useful, that, you know, that isn't necessarily a direct hit at someone as well, because we are trying to form that safety and that trust and all those good things that we've talked about. But, you know, we also want to do it in a way that is really useful. Sean in the chat has just sort of said the SBI method's really good as well, which is the situation, behavior and impact, and that kind of flows on from what I was saying as well. So there's a really good, I'll try and flick a link into the LinkedIn group, and it was about how you create a culture of giving feedback. It was a Webstock talk that I went to several years ago now, but Claire Liu provided some really great frameworks around that. So I'll share that link out.
Beautiful. Kia ora, Charlotte. Now, Joe, I know we've only got a couple of minutes left with you because you've got to zip off. You've got an event at 2:30. Your
I could push it. I could push it till 2:20. I'm enjoying myself.
Love it.
I love it. Let's jump into Grant's opened a question here. Kia ora, Grant. What's the difference in enabling performance between an agile and a non-agile approach? Beautiful question, Grant. Any context you want to add to that?
Only that I'm looking at this other screen and I'm geeking out on, you know, I'm a bit of a non-agile person. I don't know a lot about this, a lot of the terms like SBIs and OKRs and I suppose, and even the coaching side. I do coaching, but I'm also fascinated how it gets used in the agile approach. So I'm just wondering, Joe and others, you know, what's the difference between enabling, you know, that high performance for somebody who doesn't know actually a lot about agile, as opposed to if you're doing it in a, I was going to say proper way, in an agile methodology, if that makes sense.
Oh, you're up, Joe.
So I think the important distinction for me is that whatever methodology you're trying to do to accomplish something, you're still trying to accomplish that something. And whether your approach is to start from a place of uncomfortable vagueness and work towards a place where you have more certainty, or if you want to start in a place where you have more structure put into place to sort of have the I don't want to say illusion because it's not quite the illusion, but at least the visibility of what you know and what you don't know, which would be more of a, doesn't have to even be waterfall, but more of a more planned approach, a more coordinated approach. You're still trying to do the same thing, so you still have to ask the same questions. So you still have to ask, what are we trying to do? What's in scope? What's out of scope? Do we have a way of measuring how we're going to get from A to B? What is that way going to look like? What can we depend on in terms of communication? How often will we meet? Who's responsible for these things and not these things? So it doesn't matter whether you're agile or not agile, you're still having the same conversations. I think the difference between an agile approach to delivery versus, I guess, like a specifically non-agile, I don't want to just leap to waterfall, but a non-agile approach would be, agile would probably start with what we're trying to accomplish, what we know, what we could deliver soon to challenge our assumptions. So agile would have more of a delivery focused sooner, and not even that what we would deliver would make it to production, but we could test it with customers, we could test it whoever's going to use it, we could test it on a system. What do we have here? And we probably prioritize it based on assumptions that if we knew earlier, we could probably scope the work a little bit better. And again, that doesn't necessarily, I mean, like if you did small incremental waterfall, you might get a very similar response too, if you did it that way too. So I think you end up talking about the same thing. What the difference is really in what people are, the people that you're working with, what are they comfortable with? Will they understand one form of communication versus another? So would they understand a more requirements-based, let's talk up front, at least define what we know versus what we don't know, and then create some sort of delivery plan? Or are they like, let's just crack in. We actually don't know very much. We just know that there's this outcome and we have a month to sort of spin our wheels and figure this out. Let's deliver a bunch of stuff and see what comes out. Either's fine. It's just the approach.
And maybe just to build on that as well, Grant, I'm not sure, and maybe we can share this in the LinkedIn group as well, is around the 4 values of Agile and the 12 principles. Can be a really nice place to start to see the difference of these 2 different environments. But the number, let me find the exact number of it, principle number 5 is build projects around motivated individuals, give them the environment and support they need and the trust to get the job done. Now that's one of the foundational principles of Agile. And there's a couple of big words in there that we've already touched on today around trust and providing the environment for people to trust people to do the work. And that's probably one of the biggest shifts from whatever your traditional way of working might be, whether you now call it Agile, whether you have another name for it, new ways of working. The biggest shift often is around this trust element, trusting people, and what's required in order to trust people. And that performance piece sits in there as well. You know, who is responsible for this performance? If we trust someone and we're clear on what they need to do, is a very different way of working than perhaps controlling the person or feeling as though you need to control the work that they do and measure their performance because they can't measure it themselves. So that might be a really nice place to start, is those 12 principles and the 4 values. I'll put them into the LinkedIn group just to get a feel for what it is that this whole piece has been built on, really, is around understanding some of that as well.
Often performance is measured differently. I think if you were going to go to, now I'm going to bring in waterfall. Waterfall performance would be measured by the milestones and the different stages. So you would have good performance in different stages. Performance ultimately in Agile is producing valuable solutions. So like the sooner that you produce something that's valuable, whether that value is determined by we've validated an approach or not, the sooner that you deliver something that the client or the customer or whoever's going to be using it can have, the better. So performance is linked to delivery. So if you had a project that took 6 months to actually deliver anything, so, and I'm not talking about requirements, I'm not talking about prototypes, I'm talking about like anything. You get like the first beta version or alpha version of something, that would be a very low performing project. Even if it was on time and on budget and everything, that would be a very low performing project in terms of Agile. Agile probably the longest would be 3 months.
So can I just ask a thing around, because in what I quite like, Cheryl, what you read out was around motivated employees. So I think one of the things with that performance though is making sure that you understand what is motivating the employee, because you can, ask for performance, but if it goes against what motivates them, you may not get the best out of them. So maybe linking back into that motivation for them as well.
Yeah, it unpacks the whole piece there. You're right, really a really loaded word, or a big piece. It requires a motivated individual, which is a whole different approach, right? Different approach that you might take to supporting that person to become motivated, or enabling them. If we're using the words for today, how do you enable motivation?
Yeah.
Beautiful. Grant, has that given you a couple of little places to start?
Yep, totally. And it's also nice to see in the comments that somebody else knew Agile.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, cool.
yeah, that's cool. So popping them up would be great.
Yeah, totally, man. We'll put some stuff in there as well, because I know, again, the purpose of this community is to bring together Agile professionals who know a lot about this stuff and don't know a lot about HR, and HR professionals that know a lot about HR but not a huge amount about Agile. And so this is the goal of these sessions, is how do we bring these communities together and help understand we're all trying to help the people. And so I love it. Thank you, Grant, for being vulnerable and saying, I don't really know what this, so it's awesome. Super cool. Joe, I'm aware you got a roll. Hey, thank you so much for your time today. I realized we had to adjust and shift things. We've got a bunch more questions that are sitting here. What we might do is just keep some of these and maybe even keep a little bit of a chat going within our LinkedIn group. If you'd be up for answering a couple of these, or at least sharing some of your thoughts, because I think there's a couple in there certainly around leadership support that I think would be cool to get your thoughts. But thank you for your time today. I love it. I'm walking away with the disappearing feedback thought. That's what's landing for me today. But yeah, thank you for being here, and yeah, we're so grateful.
Thank you, Cheryl. Thank you, Charlotte. Thank you, community.
Nice to see you.
Stay safe,
Cool.
people.
Yes, ka kite.
Joe's jumping off the call, but we've still got another 10 minutes at the end here. And one of the things we're aware of is that we're setting up these sessions with a podcast feel, so people can tune in if they want. But we know that there's people in our community that are quite interested in actually talking with others around these topics as well. It's something that Charlotte and I are looking at, of like trying to create maybe multiple types of events so people can pick and choose. Do I just want to listen in, or do I want to engage? What we thought, just maybe before we kind of close out the session, is for anyone that would like to, we might hold a breakout room for about maybe 4 or 5 minutes for anyone that wants to jump into the session. If you just want to catch up with a couple of people and have a talk about some of the things that have landed, we're going to open up a breakout room very shortly. So if you would like to process some of the things that you've just heard, we'll hold that opportunity for you to do it. Just to let you know, in terms of the next session, we want your vote now on what our next topic will be, because this is the content of this is based on whatever you guys want. So let me open up the poll. All right, the poll has been launched. So there are five questions.
Yeah.
5 questions in here. So what we're just interested in is, timing. Does this time of the day work? Obviously, slightly adjusted the timing for Jacinda's announcement that didn't quite happen, but does this generally work for you? Duration, does it 1 hour feel quite good? Just give us a bit of feedback there. Format, again, podcast style, is this the type of thing that's working? Content, what we're keen to know is, what topic do you want next month? So this, the top vote, will get in there. And then question 5, which I've put 2 5s next to it, I'm not sure why it's on that. This is just this piece around, are you interested in having some breakout sessions or an event where we actually host it in a bit more of a collaborative, you join in, you talk to others in the community. I'm just interested to see if there's a bit of demand for that. If there is, then we take the feedback, the 2-way communication. This is feedback for us, right? And we're going to do something with it, otherwise it disappears, and then you will never give us feedback, because why would you if the feedback doesn't go anywhere? Awesome. I'll just hold another, say, 30 seconds for people to get in and pop their feedback in there. Really appreciate it. It helps us create more of what you want, is our goal. And as if you've already done the poll and you're just holding a little bit of space, I'd love you to just reflect today on just even one thing that's really landed for you, whether it be a comment, whether it be a question, whether it be something that someone said, or something that perhaps some context connected for you, where you can see this could be possible in your organisation. I'd love you to just take a moment and capture what is one thing that's landed for you today. There's probably a number of things bubbling around in your mind. And in a classic coach style, I'm going to offer you the opportunity to decide on what's one action that I could take coming out of this that I could actually move forward on, something I could test, something I could do. So offering a way for you to take something that you've learned today and putting it into some action. And if you have an opportunity to let us know how that goes, I love hearing what people do when they come out of these sessions. It gives me a real buzz. All right, we're going to end the poll there. Let's share results. Again, let's make our feedback transparent. Thank you, Joe, for that reminder. So timing wise, looks as though time of the day and is working pretty well. Duration, generally pretty good. Format was perfect. So we've got about 14% format. So that's a little bit of a shift. So yeah, okay, we've got a little bit there. Maybe we've got some different options that we want to put forward. Org design roles and career paths is back as the topic again. We actually had that as our topic, is it last month? Cool. Awesome. What we might do is we'll split that into 3 and we'll put a poll on our LinkedIn group to see which one is of most interest. Organizational design was last time, so we might see if that's still the same again. And breakout groups, yeah, there's a few people that are keen for that sometimes, and no thanks. Beautiful, cool. Thank you for sharing. Really appreciate that feedback. 1 month's time, we'll host another event and the topic will be org design roles and career paths. I've created a LinkedIn event for that. So if you want to stay in touch with what we're doing, we've got, Charlotte, would you mind putting a little link?
I'll sort that out.
That would be awesome. Thank you. Join in our LinkedIn group. That's where we keep updates of the events that are happening. And that's where we share stuff that come up in these sessions as well. All right, we're just going to hold a few minutes here. We're going to open up breakout rooms. I'm just going to do some random ones. So we'll go automatically. Maybe we'll open it into about 5 rooms. We'll see how that goes. I'll open them up. If you feel like having a conversation, head on in, and I'll bring you back in about 3 or 4 minutes. And if we go